are so funny. Trying to get me to do this stupid shit. And
she just whispered, "I'm a bad bitch," for anyone who didn't hear. Stop. 420.
I'm lit at Disney.
And the kids asleep in the bath.
There we go. A ball sack station.
That's what a business owner looks like. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Tattoo Homewreckers. This is a podcast where we talk about tattoos, life, and everything in between. My name is Callista, and this is
Lou.
And today, we are here to record an episode.
Yes. So this is the first episode we've recorded since we had to put our dog down. And that was about a week ago. We pre-recorded some stuff because we knew that it was going to be really hard and take some time.
Yes, as it has proven to be so.
Yes. And so it's been 1 week and 1 day. Mm-hmm. And we're not ready to do an episode on grief just yet. But we will come back to that because it is something that I do want to talk about.
Yes, absolutely.
But instead, we've been like mulling over the idea of doing a conversation about conflict. Mm-hmm. And just so happened to find a perfect video, like a reel to kind of review and like expand upon. Yep. But before we start, we're going to play it in its entirety for you, and then we're going to like break it down. Cool. But before we do that, what does your gender feel like today?
My gender feels like I'm going to give the same answer as I gave you yesterday.
Perfect. I was going to ask you if you felt the same as yesterday because I feel the fucking same.
Yeah, I feel like a lollipop that's been melting on the asphalt. Like I want to be sugary and sweet and wonderful, but the sun is just beating down so hard on me and my insides are just everywhere, and that's how my brain feels. So that's what my gender and my brain feels like today. What about you?
I'm going to say with the same thing because we talked about it yesterday on the drive home from work. That my gender feels, and just my whole being, everything about me feels like a jelly bean that has been stepped on and run over and is just like crushed. Yeah, just crushed.
Yeah.
Like you look at it and you're like, that's sad.
You look at it and you're like, gosh, I could go for a jelly bean, but maybe not that one.
Yeah, like you walk past and you're like, oh, that probably fell out of someone's like candy bag, and that's really sad.
Yeah.
And I am that discarded jelly bean.
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
And because I'm sure someone out there is going to be like, oh my God, but what flavor? I'm going to say buttered popcorn because that is a trash fucking jelly bean. And that's what I feel like. I feel like fucking speckly, crushed jelly bean.
God, if all my buttery popcorn jelly beans could fall out of the bag, that would be phenomenal.
Thanks. You're just going to discard all of us.
No, I would not. Not you.
So, well, I
hate a buttery popcorn.
Apparently, I'm a buttered popcorn jelly bean right now.
I'd be a cherry flavored lollipop, but the ones that taste like medicine. I like
those ones. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Those ones are good.
Of course you do.
Okay, great. Well, this reel is by Mel Williams. I believe that's her name. I'm so sorry if I got it wrong. We will double, triple check and then leave a link to her profiles in the description so that way you guys can check her out.
Yes.
But I'm gonna go ahead and start playing it. And then do you want to play it in its entirety and then we can kind of, or do you?
I'm happy with either.
Cool. I think what I want to do is I'll probably raise my hand when I feel like pausing. You raise your hand when you feel like pausing. Okay. Phenomenal. Okay, we're going to play it for you guys.
So recently I was talking to a friend about a conflict she had with her husband. The details of the conflict aren't important, but she said something really interesting in the conversation. She asked this question, essentially saying, if men are so good at problem solving, why are they so bad at solving problems within their relationship or even arriving to a moment of repair in their relationship? I hear so many women in my life and on this platform expressing this need to have their problem validated and to tackle whatever is going on in their relationship as a team. I hear so many women saying things to the effect of, I don't need you to tell me if my problem is real. I don't need you to tell me if I have the right to be upset. I don't need you to tell me whether or not I misunderstood something that caused me to be upset. I need you to care that I'm upset. And I think
Okay. Do you want to start with that?
No, I want you to start.
Okay.
Because I love that we wanted to pause at the same time.
I want to start with the case that this is not purely gendered, so we are not coming after men. It's that most people that are raised in like a male like centric dynamic, like they were raised with like male privilege, And that can go across the board of like all genders. So I'm not specifically talking about just men here, but you are not taught to validate other people's feelings.
Yes.
This is just, and I have a stack of books that I will not remember to put in the show notes. But if you reach out to me, then I can give you these books with like emotional labor and the mental load and like, I forgot the other one. I think it's the, oh my God, I just forgot it.
That's okay. It'll come
I just
back
forgot
to
the
you.
title of it. But it's, The Tragedy of Heterosexuality.
There we go.
That's the title. But it's been studied time and time again that men are not taught when they are boys to have empathy towards other people or to validate their feelings. And the example that like Caboose and I were discussing was that if you're ever asked, hey, how does that make you feel? Or like, if you did something that was like not nice to someone else, were you asked by adults who were addressing the problem, how would that make you feel if somebody did that to you? Is not a question that most boys or people raised in that kind of sphere dealt with. Whereas little girls tend to carry the emotional labor in relationships, which is why this seems to be a very gendered thing. But to go into the queer realm, those same dynamics tend to happen in queer relationships as well. Now, less often, but they can still happen. And what that looks like is like codependency in somebody taking responsibility for emotions that aren't theirs, because that's oftentimes what happens in these kind of relationships. And I'm speaking from someone who has experienced that in my very own relationship, because once again, Caboose was not taught these things as a kid. And instead meant that I then had to hold his hand through my emotions. And he was doing exactly that, where he was just trying to essentially prove why those emotions weren't valid.
Yeah, exactly. I think to me, it's the simplicity of like, all we want is for you to care. I need you to care about like the fact that what something was said or like something that had done like had affected me, and to set aside your own feelings for a second and actually take the time to like be curious about why, because that's caring. Caring is going, oh, okay, like, so this had happened. Tell me exactly how you're feeling. Tell me what was going through your brain. Like it's less of like like explaining like, oh, okay, well, like, but my intention was this, or that's not what really happened. Yeah. Or like, but you're taking it the wrong way, or blah, blah, blah. It all of a sudden seems like we're in like court, right? Discussing like how feelings, like what my feelings are. Yeah. You know? Like we're not, when it comes to validating people's experiences and people's feelings, it's not about talking about like what you perceive as the case or your like side of it. It's to take and remove yourself and your emotions from it, so you can say, hey, I'm sorry that hurt you. And it doesn't mean like I'm wrong for saying I'm sorry. And even then, as someone who doesn't particularly like the like term I'm sorry, whenever like you've brought up, hey, that hurts my feelings, yes, my first reaction is always going to be that little tinge of defensiveness. Like, I didn't mean that, but I have to swallow that to be like, can you please tell me more about it? And it's about meeting that statement with curiosity. Yeah. And that's a really big thing that like part of why we want to talk about this is because like we've learned these dynamics on each other. Yes. And people often talk to us about how they like our relationship, how they're like, oh my gosh, like you guys are so close. Like, how are you able to live together, work together? Right. How are you able to do that without like chewing each other's heads off? And it's because like we're very like clear and direct about how we're feeling in the moment, or like what our plans are, or like what we're setting up to do in a way that's organic. And I think the reason why it's organic is because neither of us are trying to like appear at court against each other. Well, we're not trying to win. I think that's the biggest thing, is that like one of the issues that I've had in conflict with people is that like I say, hey, when you did that, this is what happened for me. And then they come with the fact of like, well, that wasn't what I meant to do, or like, that's not how it happened. It's like, dude, I don't give a fuck about what you meant. Intention does not. Yes. Can we clear that up? Because that is like the most common thing that I see happening within conflict is like, well, my intentions weren't that. Like, but here's the thing. intentions don't matter when the damage has already been done.
Yeah.
Just because you state your intention does not take away the feelings that I have felt or am feeling currently.
Yes.
You know, and I think that's like the biggest thing. Yeah, the reason why we're able to successfully like go through conflict with each other is because we're not here to win.
No, because
Ever.
if either one of us brings something up, we're able to, like, if you bring something up, I'm able to be like, hey, I want to make sure that I understand this so I don't hurt you in the future.
Yeah.
And so I have a better understanding of you, and like, you're a constantly evolving individual. So I think that's the other part for me in like conflict and conflict resolution, is that we get stuck in this place of like, well, you once said this. And it's like, yeah, but people fucking change and grow.
Yeah.
And so my job, like I've said before, in our relationship is to bear witness to your life and your life experiences. And that's it. It's not to not to invalidate you and be like, oh no, that's right or wrong. It's that if you say, hey, when you did that, that hurt me, it's for me to also accept that as like, thank you for trusting me with your emotions.
Yeah, because being the person who brings up like, hey, that like upset me is like, I think people forget is a equally vulnerable position.
Yeah, I think that
if not more.
I don't know if people forget or if people just aren't aware, because I think that oftentimes, like, I'm a very vocal person about things that bother me because, like, I just don't want to build up resentments.
Yeah, totally.
And if you don't speak them out loud, they'll get built up. So if I just internalize and say, okay, I just won't bring this up, then I'm going to hold it against you later because I've learned to guard myself against you.
Yeah.
So if I then come to you and I say, hey, when you did this, this is how I felt.
Yeah, I'm poisoning the own well.
The well of like our relationship.
I'm poisoning it by not bringing it up at that
exactly.
point. Yeah, totally.
But so many people see it as like, okay, you brought it up. Well, now I have to defend my position on it instead of being like, oh, wow, this really sucks that you had to sit on this and then bring this up and do the emotional labor of figuring out how to bring this up.
Yes, because I think that's also something that commonly occurs too during conflict is, oh, well, you've sat on this for this long. Why didn't you bring it up back then? It's because I've had to do the emotional labor of like even going through and running through, is this valid? Is this justified? Or is this past trauma? Is past trauma from stuff that has nothing to do with you affecting me? And did I get triggered? Like I have to go through an entire like synopsis in my brain. I'm like, is this going to be a pattern? Do you think it's going to be an issue moving forward? Like, is this going to be continuously a thing? Like, when do I bring it up? Do I bring it up next time?
And can I just add to that?
Yeah.
It can also be a case like if it takes you a long time to come to me with a problem, I sit in a place of like, oh, I did not make sure that I was a safe space for you. So like real life example right now, I am heavy in grief.
Yeah.
I am dissociating through almost everything. I'm not sleeping. I'm not eating well. I am not working out consistently. Like I am a shell of the person that I was a couple weeks ago. And I have not reached out to, but like maybe 2 people that I know that have been through like very similar, if not the exact same situations, because I know, and this is not meant to be in a mean way, but I know that a lot of the people in my life cannot bear witness to the pain that I currently have. And I know this because I've expressed that pain to people and they have not been able to sit with it.
Yeah, which in turn makes you hurt even more.
Yeah.
Like we're in like damage reducing mode. We're in energy saving mode.
Yes. I am
pure survival.
Literally on like 2% on my fucking battery on my phone.
Yeah.
And it's like doing everything it can to shut everything down.
Yeah. And we're consistently like having to plug it back in just enough to get it to working, but then working like super hard and then having to plug in every now and again.
And so especially for me being somebody who is, you know, autistic and has ADHD and also is just like genuinely kind of a private person when it comes to like how like comes to my pain, that means I'm not reaching out to anyone. And then I'm dealing with the ramifications of that, of people being upset that I'm not reaching out but it isn't that empathy going like both ways. Like I can understand that from their side. That means that hurts. That sucks to not be that person. Like if you don't come to me with something that's bothering you, I sit in a place of like, oh, I wonder what I can do next time. But I'm going to wait for you to express everything first. Because I think that's like the one last thing before we hit play again that I want to touch on is that the Gottmans have it, and it's the like speaker listener.
Yeah.
And we've discussed this before, but it's a huge part of conflict, and we naturally do it with each other. Whereas like Caboose and I had to learn this in therapy because anytime I would bring up, hey, my feelings are hurt, he would then be like, oh, we're talking about feelings. Let me talk about my feelings. And I'm like, but we didn't address my feelings.
Yeah. And I'm the person who did the emotional labor to bring it
I
up.
took the first step. So I have a really, like, in our marriage, we have a very hard, fast rule now, which is if you're the person that takes the first step to bring up a hurt feeling, you get to finish your entire hurt feelings before, and once that person says, yes, I have been heard, I am seen, I like, you know, once I'm like, hey, yes, you understand where I'm coming from, I feel heard and seen, thank you so much, great. And he is verified, like, okay, I hear you, like, I understand what you're saying. And this does not mean an apology. To be really clear, it does not mean he's over there like, oh my gosh, I'm sorry. Yeah. It means I just want to be heard. So that way it's like, hey, you understand these are why it caused this.
Yeah.
Like, this is what happened here.
It's never a, like, I need you to explain A, B, C, D, like what she had just said.
Yes.
It's like, I just need to know that you care.
Yeah, I just need to know that you're willing to sit with me in this. And then after I've been like acknowledged, then he can bring up like, well, since we're talking about emotions, let me bring up my emotions. But at no point in healthy relationships do you say, oh, this person's brought a problem to me. Yeah. Let me just dump my shit on them. And that is the biggest thing that I see in relationships.
Period.
Where like why the fighting never goes anywhere. And I think you explained it perfectly, where it's like a fucking ceiling fan just going round and round and round and round.
Yeah. How the fuck are we just spinning? And like nothing is getting done. We have not moved a single inch like further.
And then to be clear, the reason why I stick with the person who brings up the problem gets to be the person who gets heard and validated first is because what oftentimes happens here is that someone brings up that problem. I say, hey, you hurt my feelings. This person then tries to invalidate by being like, hey, I didn't hurt your feelings because that's not what I meant and you're misunderstanding, blah, blah, blah. So like that, you're making a big deal out of nothing. But I'm going to tell you that like, I'm a piece of shit. I feel really terrible. I'm just an awful person. So then I have to take all of my feelings and put them aside so that way I can comfort them through that. And then we don't come back to my feelings ever. And it's really hard for me to sit in a place of like compassion and empathy when it's like, dude, my feelings had to get put aside so I could walk you through this. And that is the case with, I'm sure, many people listening. A lot of women listening are going to be like, oh my fucking God, yes.
Yeah, that's exactly what happens.
And it took Caboose and I going to therapy for him to be like, oh, fuck, that is what happens with us.
Yep.
And of course, there's tons of resources out there. And I will put some of my favorite like Instagram people and YouTube people because like they can break this down in beautiful little tiny synopsis of like little reels and videos that you can send your loved ones.
So you're just getting the most bang for your buck at that point. It's like a short listen and it's entertaining. And it's enough to like, okay, bite-sized chunks of very large, very big, complex concepts. Okay, are we ready?
Yes.
Cool.
And that happens not just with men, but it's really a characteristic of privilege, is that when folks who have a position of privilege enter a conflict, they take on an arbitration role. And let me tell you what I mean. So when two people meet on equal footing, right, and they see themselves as equals and they don't see the other person's vision or ideas about them as a threat to their sense of self or their...
Absolutely.
I really want to repeat that because this is something that like, when she said that, it was fucking mind-blowing for me, was that when they see themselves as equals and that person's vision of them is not a threat. And I think that's another reason why you and I can go into conflict together and not have it be what typical conflict looks like.
Yeah, where it's like, oh, are you sure that it's going to be okay? Like whenever we go into conflict, I'm very much like, no, this conversation is only going to be as like serious or as stressful as I allow it to be.
Yes.
And like, I have that trust in you as well. We both have that trust.
It's because we also both have a full sense of like self. So like, just to use my marriage, because it's the easiest like example I can give. Whenever I would say something to Caboose, or it was like, hey, that hurt me, or like, I don't know, like he did something that I thought was like out of character and I just didn't understand it. And then I would ask him about it. He would get really defensive and start being like, well, I'm not like that. That's not me. You think I'm a piece of shit and I'm not a piece of shit. And it's because he sees our relationship. And I can say this implicitly because we've had this discussion of like, I'm better than him, which to be clear, I am not, but because he sees an imbalance in us. So it's not even that he necessarily sees himself as better. He sees that when it comes to any sort of emotional labor, I am better. Therefore, if I am like questioning things, which I do because that's part of like autism, is that like I need to understand things to a minute level in order to process it and to feel like safe. That's just residual trauma. But I need to question things, and he perceives questions as an attack because he thinks that when he's being questioned, it is that I am like exerting my power over him. So it's not even a case of like when she talks about privilege, which yes, is very much a thing of like, it can be the case of like, if you think someone's better than you, then you're going to take what they say as an attack on your character and not as something that's like, hey, we're trying to have a deeper understanding because we are equal. And I think that to me was a huge thing because like that is very much how I see us. Like I've always been really, I think now that we both own a business together, and I can only speak for myself, I cannot speak for you. I think there's less of a power dynamic difference between us. But like I was always really clear on the fact that because I was your mentor all those long years ago,
we just got another contact request form. Sorry, I just needed to say that.
And because there was an age difference, I was really conscious of the fact that there was a power dynamic difference in us. So it was on me, the person of privilege, to then meet you where you were at and to not use that against you.
Yeah, and I think it's gotten a lot better since we don't work at a shop where like we first started as mentor apprentice, because everyone else like tried to still push that like narrative of because now that it's just the two of us and we don't have like a group of people trying to push the narrative of there's a power dynamic, we can like it's gotten so much easier because it's just the two of us and we've known that it's existed, but it's hard when there's people pushing that kind of propaganda.
Yes,
our relationship.
That's great. I really need to like sit in that. Because I've noticed that it's like not that anymore, but not in. That's great.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. People really do have effect on other people. What?
FYI, guys, this is one of my favorite things that she does, if you haven't heard me say it multiple times, is that I do this long-winded explanation, and then she takes and will like, and this, I was not saying the same thing, to be very clear, but she'll take this like long-winded explanation and put it in this like beautiful, tiny like synopsis that you're like, oh, that.
Thank you.
That's great. But that is, I didn't even think about that. Because that really bothered me before, where it was like, there was this very obvious power dynamic. And I was like, I don't want there to be, I don't think of myself as being like better or like anything different than you.
Because, and it's hard on the other side too, when people are like, well, but remember the power dynamic. And I'm like, you guys are like pushing me into it though. It's not even you that's doing it. It's not me either. It's everybody else freaking me out. But
that's great.
Gosh. Okay, great.
Wow. Yes.
Or anything like that, they generally come to the table in a collaborative fashion, right? I think of conversations I've had with friends where I've said, hey, this hurts me, and they're immediately like, what's going on? There's a pause, there's a listen, there's reflection, etc. I feel like this fails to happen between men and women because men oftentimes remove themselves from the conflict and begin to make decisions about the conflict itself. These decisions can look a couple different ways. It can look like deciding whether or not there is a problem, what the problem is, what the problem is caused by, whether or not the problem is a result.
I just need to add in there, this whole removing yourself from the problem and deciding what the problem is without listening to the other person is a way of removing any accountability from yourself and also removing the emotions of it. Because once again, that is the not sitting in like the face of someone else's pain.
You're not witnessing it.
Yes, you were not witnessing it. So like the example that I will give is that like I'm painting our house right now because of things. And I'm really sad about painting our house because I'm painting it back to being like really neutral colors. And it's been a really like, while grieving for Waffles, I'm also grieving for the fact that like I put my heart and soul into this house. And oftentimes people think of like painting a home as just like, oh yeah, you just like decorating or you like painting. But for me, my entire home is a piece of artwork that I have worked on. It is like interior design is truly a love of mine. And to be going from these rooms that are, I'm probably gonna cry. I just realized that.
It's okay.
From going from these rooms that I've like put myself into, to then make them more palatable for people to come and like see the house. It's a really hard place to sit in because it is partly the, hey, your home is too much for other people to be sellable. And it's also the erasure of like our existence here. So like one of the things that I did right before Waffles was we had a puppy gate upstairs because the corgis couldn't be together. And while she was still like alive and you were making her dinner, I like removed the puppy gate that night because I was like, whatever, Bailey can be in the bedroom for like one morning. It's not a big deal. But I removed it and patched over the wall and just, I guess, to slightly toot my own horn here, I did a great job. So you can't tell that there was ever a puppy gate there.
Truly.
But as I was painting over like where I like patched the holes, I was thinking about the fact that like there's no marks or existence that it ever happened. And that painting the house means that like there's none of us that's left. And especially for me as a person who has felt very much like I've been told my whole life that I'm too much, that I'm too big, I'm too bold, I'm brash, like whatever the fuck you want to say. I like that you're crying. So then to have to dial most of the things in my home back down to make it sellable and palatable for people is a really hard place to sit in because it reaffirms that like narrative that I've been told my whole life that like you're too bright. So not only am I covering up my own artwork, which for any artists out there, just imagine going to your favorite canvas and being like, paint that shit white. Give it back to a blank slate. No one fucking wants to buy it the way that you did it. It's not, you're not like your art, not sellable. Knock that shit back down. It's a hard place to sit in that grief. And this was my long-winded explanation to talk about how I then said that to Caboose. I said, hey, like, it's really hard for me because like I typically would paint, you know, walls with rollers, but I've been painting over murals that I've done in our like home with a paintbrush because I wanted to honor them the same way I painted them the first time. So I've been doing a lot of things like, and it takes longer, but it feels like a I don't know, honoring of like what we had here. And Caboose said to me, well, you'll have another house. Like we'll get another place. Like you can just do it again. He didn't say that many words, but that's what he implied. I don't remember his exact words. Do you?
We'll have another house.
Yeah. So he said, we'll have another house one day. And I had to like sit in that moment of like feeling completely like, you decided that this wasn't something that I should be emotional about.
Which is exactly what she said. They put they removed themselves from it.
Yes.
And put themselves in a like deciding thing. Of, like whether or not the problem exists.
Yes.
Whether or not your feelings are valid.
Yep.
Whether or not they're what she was gonna say, the problem is a result of a misunderstanding.
Yes.
Like these are not things that like need to be decided or said.
Yeah. So for me, like in that moment, I had a decision to make whether I could explain to him, like, no, it's a big deal. Because first off, this is not my first time mentioning this to him.
Sorry.
This is my, like, I don't know, 15th time. Because every time I'm painting a room, and there's a lot of rooms to paint, not that we have a big house, I just fucking decorated every single room. Every time I keep bringing up the fact that, like, our house is like losing personality and it's just boring and it looks to me like a prison cell because it's just going back to like plain walls. Mm-hmm. And when he said that, I was like, your decision here is to either tell him your perspective of this so he can have a deeper understanding of you and can hold you through this like incredibly painful time, or you can just like brush it aside and, in my sense, build up that resentment of the fact that like you don't understand me, you don't get that this is like me painting over my own existence. Like I don't exist here. Yeah. And I'm leaving little areas, but like that's once again saying, hey, you're too much for people. Mm-hmm. So I, told him like, hey, with you saying that, that's kind of like me telling you that when you're sad about Waffles passing, don't worry, dude, you'll get another dog. We'll get another dog eventually. Mm-hmm. And he like was laying on the floor at the time and he just went, touche. And he didn't apologize, which I love because I hate an I'm sorry because like that doesn't mean shit to me as a child of an abusive parent and a like toxic family system. I'm sorry means nothing to me. But when he said touche, like he got it. He fully understood that. He was like, that's fucked. I didn't realize that it was this painful for you. So he like saw and witnessed my pain. Mm-hmm. And then we talked about it later when he went to bed. I'm not sleeping, so I stayed up. But we talked about it further in the fact that he was like, well, I know that you hate the fact that our room has no color. He's like, but I have to say, it does make me feel like I'm staying in a hotel. He's like, and that probably doesn't help you. And because he acknowledged that that probably didn't help me, it allowed me to hear that and then sit in the fact that I was like, you know what? If I think about it like that I'm making our house fresh like a hotel, that gives me like a pivot point. Mm-hmm. But that would have never happened if A, I hadn't expressed to him my emotions, and B, he hadn't done enough work around his mental, like an emotional like load.
Yes.
To realize that what he said was incredibly hurtful.
Right.
And by no means did he mean it to do that. He just meant that as a way of being like, I'm going to throw a Band-Aid on this because she looks like she's in pain and I don't want to witness her pain. So I'm going to throw a Band-Aid on it. Mm-hmm. And instead, he then said, you know what? I'm going to accept that invitation to see how awful this is for you to do, but also know that this is part of your grieving process of like our home no longer being our home. And then sit with you in that. I'm so sorry. That was so long, but I had to like.
No, that's great. I loved it. That was phenomenal. I mean, that's the thing is like the only thing that I have to say before we get started again is, like you can't expect your relationship to get closer when you choose to remove yourself. So he removed himself for a moment, right? But then again, took that bit of connection of going, oh shit, you're right. Touche. Came back in.
Yep.
And then you two were closer as a result of like that. But also he has a sense of self. So he didn't take it as like an attack on his character or himself. It was more so just an observation of like, that, that made me feel like that. Like it hurt me more. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, let's get closer. So,
and I think that's the thing is that he sat in that discomfort of me being in pain, and now we are closer for that.
Yeah.
Whereas before, if he was here right now, he's at therapy, so he's not here. He would have told you that he was only ever trying to have conversations in a way to get out of that conversation and not in a way of deepening understanding. And it, like, does it suck right now that we're having fights that we've had for 17 years and they last like 3 or 4 fucking hours at a time because now we're trying to have a deeper understanding? Yes. But the earlier you start that, the less of that you have to have, which is why like our relationship hasn't had that. Like our conflicts are like fucking menial little things. Because at no point are we against each other. We're always operating from a place of like, I want to know if something hurts you.
Yeah.
Or if something makes you happier. So that way I can like be there for that.
Amazing.
Okay. Cool. I cried.
I know, right? That was good. That was a good cry.
Etc., etc. On the surface, this can sound like super logical and rational and stoic, I guess, in a lot of ways. But if you dig deep, it's quite different. There's a very subtle, insidious, and frankly violent power dynamic that plays out in these kinds of interactions. Let me give you an example. When we have conversations as Black people about things like police brutality or racism in America, oftentimes we'll be met by white folks, particularly white women, that will point to another problem, citing that as the real problem. When women bring up their issues about feminism to men, men can often say things like, aren't there bigger fish to fry? Aren't there more serious things to worry about? So we obviously know that that is frustrating, distracting, and invalidating. But I think the piece that makes it so hurtful is the fact that the problem is being taken away from the person experiencing the pain of it, right? So if you've got an issue and I say, hey, isn't there something else here? This is actually a misunderstanding. The person has claimed control over the narrative of the situation for both of us, right? Deciding to arbitrate the narrative. And in doing so, essentially decided the real problem isn't the way that another person was hurt, isn't a result of maybe their careless or unkind behavior. The real problem is the person's response.
I had to pause there because we just need to soak in that. The power dynamic of taking that person's feelings and then deciding from then forth that their feelings actually are invalidated.
Yep.
They're a result of a misunderstanding. You're taking control of the situation, taking control of the narrative, taking away the power of that person who was vulnerable enough to share those hard feelings to you. And then essentially just crushing it.
Yeah, I feel like personally, when you do that and you say, okay, it's just a misunderstanding and you start to like take it yourself, it's not even that like you're just like crushing them. It's that you're telling, like crushing their like feelings around it. It's that you're telling them outright that their feelings are wrong.
Yeah, you are inadvertently or maybe advertently punishing them for coming to you with a feeling that is uncomfortable.
Yeah. And then to add to that, I also feel like when you do come to someone with a problem, then oftentimes that same person, when you stop coming to them with stuff, is then like, but why didn't you tell me?
Oh, 100%.
And it's like, because you can't sit in any of your responsibility. Because to be very clear, it's not like we don't say things or do things that hurt each other or that we don't get frustrated. It's that if I say or do something, even if it is careless, we've had conversations around race that I've been particularly careless about. And then you've had to be like, no, that's really hurtful. And I have to sit in that because as a person of privilege, being a white presenting individual, I then have to sit in that place of like, you're right. That's no. And that wasn't my intention. But once again, intention does not matter. All that matters is how you've perceived it. And I think that like, I understand how frustrating that is. As somebody who like loves to be right, I understand how frustrating it is to be like, but that's not my intention. And I'm like, yeah, I know. But at the end of the day, if you want to have healthy relationships, the intention around whatever fucking thing you've said or done doesn't matter. What matters is how that person has perceived it. And then from there, if you want to have deep connections with people, it's sitting in that like perception and having understanding. Because now I know. I know to be like, oh, you know what? You're 100% correct about that. That is not like the words I was using were not how I like was trying to explain myself, but then like kind of is, but like, but I didn't get to express my viewpoint until you were done expressing yours.
Yep.
And I think for me, I'm going to keep like harping on that shit because as somebody who is oftentimes have people be like, well, and I'm like, dude, when we're talking about feelings, you don't get to actually somebody.
No.
If we're talking about facts, I will actually you any day of the week. That being said, if you come back to me with different facts and you're like, actually, hey, I'm super happy to have those debates.
Yep.
But if we're talking about feelings, it is never an actually. If you tell me that like something has triggered you, it doesn't necessarily mean that I have to change my behavior. So I guess that's something I want to touch on really quick. I don't have to change my behavior. But that being said, you can also decide whether or not you want to be in a relationship with me.
Absolutely.
If that behavior doesn't change. But if I keep repeating something that harms you and you keep telling me it harms you, that doesn't tell you I'm a safe person.
Yep. Absolutely.
Whereas like the reason that we feel safe with each other is because if you say, hey, that bothers me, or more accurately, if I say, hey, that hurts my feelings, or like, I don't understand you, then you're really good at being like, I probably wasn't as clear because I have facts.
Yeah.
We had that yesterday when we were recording.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Content.
We were recording
and I was like,
content.
I don't know what you want. I don't know what's happening.
Yeah.
right
And
here.
I was like, I'm also having a really hard time explaining. So I get
Yeah.
that. And I'm like, okay, like what could be easier? And you're like, okay, we should do your bit first, which in my
Yes.
brain did not make any sense at all. But I was like, okay, if that makes it easier for you, I'm
because
willing to
then,
do that.
and now that you say it like that, now I can be like, oh, because then my mirror neurons were able to do your part.
Right.
So I'm like, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And like even
I need
yesterday,
an example first. Now I'm
yeah,
starting to
I'm like, I
understand
need an
too.
example. Yeah. I'm like, I don't know what you want. There's a camera in my face and I don't know what to do.
Yep.
And then that really helped me when I was like, can we just record your part first? And I could still tell that you were like not understanding and I wasn't understanding because both of us, to be completely clear, I can't actually speak for you, so I'm sorry. I was really flooded and looking at you, I'm guessing you were as well because you were also like, I don't know either.
Yeah, I don't know
Like-
how else I can describe this.
Yeah.
I was like, where do we go from here?
I'm
And we're
like-
also both like not in the mood to be there.
Yeah.
Not in the mood to be dressed up. Not in the mood to look happy in front of the camera.
No.
But you know what? We were just trying our best.
Yes. And so like we still run into conflict, but at no point did that like for me like create like division between us or resentment. I
Yeah.
felt like, okay, I need to know like I'll think about this later, not right now. I didn't realize it was going to come on the podcast, but I told myself at that point I was like, you'll think about this later, like how to figure out what happened and like how to have a better like understanding of it. But right now, once again, I'm at 2%. So I'm not trying to do that.
Yeah, for sure.
But like now that we've had a 30-second to 2-minute conversation, we're like, oh, I need to see you so I know what to do.
The light bulb just flickered on for
Yeah.
me. So I don't know if you saw it in my brain. I was like, oh, okay. When you said mirror neurons, I was like, that makes a lot of sense, actually.
Yeah, because then
I
I
was like,
know
why
what
would
you
we
want.
record my part first? That doesn't make any sense. I'm like, now I get it.
And in my brain too, I wasn't thinking like, oh, we'd record my part first. I was like that, or like we would record your part because I was like, oh no, that would make sense that we record my part. So then I know the like angles.
Camera movement. Yeah.
Because you're also learning that on the fly, which means now I know for future to be like, okay, can we record my part, your part, my part? So that way you can figure out what you want.
Yeah.
I can learn the camera angles from that.
Yep.
Then we can record your part.
Yeah.
Then we can come back to me.
Yeah.
And that way, like, we now know, you guys just watched us like literally problem solve.
Solve a conflict that we
solve a
had
conflict,
yesterday.
Yeah. And that's the thing is that like it's all designed around like a deepening of understanding because like I don't know how you felt yesterday. I felt really dumb because I was like, I don't understand what's happening.
I also felt dumb. I was like, oh shit. Like I wish I could find a better way to describe this, but
Yeah.
I don't know how else to. I wish I could just somehow Bluetooth the image of in my brain to you, but like I know that's not how that works.
Yeah, and that's
Unfortunately, we
and
have to
I
use
felt
our words.
I felt really bad because I felt really dumb, and then I was getting really frustrated because I felt dumb, and then I'm really struggling with like trying to regulate my emotions, and then on top of that, I could tell that like me questioning you was like making you feel kind of like dumb.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is terrible. Like I don't want to fight right now.
I know. We're
But
both
that's
like, "God
also
damn it, that's the
our
last thing
version
we
of a
need."
fight because at the end of the day, we're both trying to like always meet in the middle and no one's trying to be right. Because
Absolutely.
like, I'll just give an example real fast about like how that could have gone. And that could have been a case in which I was like, she just doesn't care about the way I look. She wants me to look bad so she looks good. Like she doesn't fucking care about explaining what she wants. She's really selfish. Like I could have gone in a spiraling shitty place, or I could have gone in the pitying place of like, woe is me. I don't know what to do. I'm not pretty enough. I don't know how to do this. I can't do anything right. Like I feel bad for her for having to be with a partner who doesn't know how to do these things. Like I could have gone to either one of those places. And if we're being completely honest, as a child of trauma, I could have gone to those really easily. But that's not how we do our relationship.
No.
Whereas for me, I know like now because of the safety of our relationship, I'm like, no, if I'm feeling dumb right now, you're probably also feeling dumb and I don't want you to feel dumb. So we got to figure out how we fucking like come together here with an understanding to better like have easier times next time.
Yep. Absolutely. Wow. And look at that. That was like a 10-minute conversation.
Yeah.
That's how you do it, folks. And you don't go on the attack. You don't assume like your self-worth. You just assume from the other place, like we were both giving each other space to be equally as confused.
Yeah, we were absolutely like, I don't understand.
Yeah, we both feel stupid. Okay, here we go.
And I think this shows up a lot of the times between men and women in terms of what the definition of a solution is. Are we trying to solve the problem, like what my friend was experiencing, of her feeling chronically interrupted or frustrated in conversation? Or from her husband's perspective, is the problem the fact that she is upset? And so the thing to be solved is her upsetness, not the...
Oh, I had to pause. Can we just sit in that really fast? The problem is she's getting interrupted. She's not feeling seen or heard. And then his idea of a solution is like, oh, well, I need to solve the fact that she's upset, period. Not that there's some complex situation that needs to be fully understood from both sides and heard. No, but that the symptom of her feelings, which is being upset, is something that needs to be fixed instead of something that needs to be repaired or addressed. Oh my God.
And I'm going to be completely honest. I had to watch this video like 3 times to hear that part. Because every single time they mentioned the being interrupted, I got really triggered. Oh. Because I'm the person who's chronically interrupting. Mm-hmm. That's okay. But otherwise, like, yeah, I think that's great. Because, like, that really was, like, what was happening between, like, Caboose and I, where he was trying to, like, fix the problem of me being upset. Mm-hmm. And I think that's oftentimes what happens, especially, like, I don't know if you feel this way. For me, I feel this way, that, like, when I bring a problem with someone... Mm-hmm. They're like, oh my God, you're expressing like being hurt around something. And then they're just trying to get the fuck out of the conversation. And that was a really illuminating thing for me to hear from Caboose, was that he was just trying to get out of conversations instead of like in our case where it's like, no, I want to know what upset you. Yeah. Because like we're aware I interrupt you a lot. And I feel bad for that. Right. But also
it's the ADHD. Yeah. I mean, honestly, I get a few licks here and there. Trixie and Katya, there's a whole montage. You can find plenty of montages of Trixie interrupting Katya. It's so funny.
I feel terrible.
It's okay.
But that's also something that we've discussed and not in a place where I felt defensive when you brought it up. But I was like, oh, well, I want to have an understanding around that.
Oh, for sure.
And that's that kind of difference. I'm not trying to run away from you being upset about it. I'm also not trying to invalidate you for being upset.
Yes. And again, I think the whole, for me too, is like trying to cure I'm going to say symptom, but it's really the emotions of being upset. I hate to think about, I think the reason why I'm using it as the word symptom is because I feel like people think that it is like a sickness. It's something that you can cure. But for me, the span of being a human being, all ranges of my emotions, that's me. They're not symptoms. They're not something to be fixed. That is me. That's my soul.
Yes.
And like, depending on how I feel, that's depending on what color my soul is. So like the fact that you're trying to fix it, like makes me feel like, so I'm not right. You know?
Yeah.
I need to be fixed.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
I know we're in like a really like prickly porcupine. Like both of us have like tears constantly welling right now. What color is your soul?
When she's like just regular?
Yeah.
Ooh. I would say she's probably like a, I don't know how to describe it, but like almost like an iridescent, like our little cover right now, but like only the green and blue hues. That's what she would be.
That's amazing.
Yeah. What about you?
Wait, I have one follow-up question.
Yeah, absolutely.
What does your soul look like right now?
Oh my God.
What color is she?
Deep blue.
Deep blue?
Yeah. She's deep blue. What about you?
I think tearing up at that. I'm also tearing up with you saying that. I think that my soul is typically like a classic Barbie pink.
I love that. Yes.
Yeah. Like I can never get my hair the correct shade.
You're like, Mattel, come out with hair.
Yeah. Because I'm looking for a very specific shade of like pink, which is what like encapsulates my soul.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. What color is your soul right now?
Black. It is in the correct light, it's like a deep blue purple. Yeah. But it is like just down in the abyss
Yes.
so far that light can't touch it.
Yeah, exactly.
So-
It's very much the deep sea, how it feels for me right now.
Yeah.
So I'm right there with you. Those were very good questions. All right, let's continue, shall we?
Chronic interruptions. This kind of conflict doesn't work. It doesn't breed resilience and it doesn't bring people closer. This kind of conflict breaks trust. The main reason being when we go to people that we care about with our problems, we're not really necessarily asking for them to solve our feelings about it. We're essentially saying, I'm having this experience. Your behavior contributed to it. Do you care? And our responsibility as loving, present, invested partners is to go, yes, I do. And from that place of, yes, I do care, it becomes you and your partner or you and your friend against the problem. What happens in this other scenario is it becomes the arbitrator of the conflict and their partner against them and their perspective and their narrative. It becomes them against their partner misunderstanding and getting upset. It becomes them against their partner's negative reaction to their behavior. And this creates a fundamental impasse. You can't negotiate from a place like this. Whenever we're arriving to the pain of another person, we have to be able to honor and validate someone's experience. Validation and verification aren't the same. When we validate someone's experience, we want to let them know that we believe them, right? That what they're experiencing is real, even if it is just real to them, and that we care about it enough to listen to it and understand it. This doesn't mean we have to agree with it. This doesn't mean that we have to fact check it. All of that is verification. A very unsettling thing.
Oh my gosh. Sorry, I had to pause one more time.
No, you're A-okay.
The difference between validation and verification. Verifying someone's feelings is fact checking. It's, that wasn't my intention. It's, you're misunderstanding.
Yes.
That's verifying someone's emotions. Validating them is removing your opinion. You do not have to agree with it. You just need to know that it exists. It is happening in real space, in real time.
Yep.
It's real, regardless of however you feel about it. Love it.
And the biggest thing for that is removing yourself. Mm-hmm. Like your value as a human being. If you need to place value on yourself to be like, I'm a good person, I would never make someone feel like that. I'm going to give you a little like pivot on that. And that is, I'm a good person. I can sit with your emotions right now. I can be with you in these emotions. That's what makes you a good person, a good friend, a good partner. Like that's what makes people want to do life with you, is that you can sit with them in their experience and their emotions, even if you were the one that caused them.
Yes, because that is literally being human. Again, that is their soul. They're bearing out their soul to you. And if you can't handle, like, it's that classic, like, if you can't handle me at my worst, you don't deserve me at my best, period. If you cannot handle my negative emotions and continue to either verify them or question them or gaslight them or whatever, then you don't deserve me at my happy, you know?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
That was,
so
you
good.
put that so well.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I was trying to think of something funny and then it just ended up being deep. All right.
I see in my comments all the time from men that don't quite understand this concept is they say things like, well, why should I validate something that's not real? Or why should I give energy or attention to something that I don't believe is true? This operates on the premise that we're almost training our partners like dogs, that we're reinforcing their behavior with our attention, and we're taking away our attention, energy, affection, and care when we do not like their behavior and reactions.
I just had to pause really fast again. I think I've felt this way so many times in previous relationships where it is a very big wound of mine where it's like, okay, so you love me when I'm loving and I'm happy, but you cannot stand me when I am vulnerable with you about something that hurt me or something that you said or something that made me uncomfortable. All of a sudden it's like, so you are training me like a dog. You're molding me to be the perfect partner for you without acknowledging that I am a whole person outside of this relationship.
Yeah. 100%.
When we do this in relationships, we're placing ourselves in a position of objectivity, and we're essentially placing ourselves not just above our partner, but above the partnership in general. We're saying that as much as they are capable of misunderstanding, we are in fact not, as we have a perfect, objective, logical, flat view of everything that's going on, every moving piece, and just need to sort of course correct our partner's experience to get them back on track. This is objectification at its finest. This is dehumanization at its finest. Most conflicts at the end of the day aren't even about who's right and who's wrong. They're not about the details and they're not about the facts, and most of the time, those things should be left out of it entirely. Conflicts are about arriving to a place where people are able to understand each other and largely understand the effect they have on each other.
I'm pausing a lot, but that was
No,
big.
you're good.
That was big.
I just want to say this is where that whole intention does not matter.
Yes.
It's the effect that what you say or do has on the people that you're in relationship with.
Mm-hmm.
Like that, I cannot like emphasize that enough.
Yes.
That like, if I say something and it sounds cruel, it does not matter if my intention was good if it hurts someone else.
Mm-hmm.
Or even if I didn't, it doesn't sound cruel, but they perceived it as something. Like, can I use the example of the food again?
Yeah. Yes.
We've talked about this before.
Absolutely.
When people comment on, and I'm really sensitive to smell, just to be really clear. But I also understand the cultural influences of like, can you explain on this a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like as someone who grew up with like Filipino food, like it has become a huge like trauma point of me because it was the only Filipino in elementary school. I would bring Filipino lunches, and obviously they have a different scent than regular American lunches. And so it became a very big wound for me of people commenting on the way that food smells.
Yep.
Because it was like an attack on me. And that was something that I couldn't control as a child. Like that was a lunch that I had packed. But also as an adult, I've really embraced, because it's like one of those things where it's like, okay, so are we just being racist then? Because you've pointed out before, there are white people food that smell terrible that no one talks about.
And so one of my ways to counter that is that because Caboose has made comments, obviously not in a like cruel way.
And not meaning to be racist at
I like
all.
how she puts it in a careless way. And it's because like, once again, he comes from a place of privilege where his food is seen as the dominant food. I say that in quotations because he's a white person. Yes.
You know.
And like when it comes down to like how the society in the US is built, white man is the like standard stereotypical, like that's what we envision as a country. Not what I envision, but what a country envisions. That's the whole point of misogyny and the patriarchy, is that you envision a white man to be the center, and then everything else deviates from there. But I have made a point that anytime that he cooks something that I don't like the way it smells, because I think it's some sort of like barbecue sauce that he has, or like Tabasco.
You're not a big fan of buffalo.
But that's what it is. It's buffalo sauce. First off, for me, with someone with a lot of sensory issues, and I say that to the fact of like, when I smell something that like my body does not like, I don't have a regular gag reflex. Like I can put my finger down my throat, nothing happens. But
Superpower.
if I smell something,
So you're at a Bed Bath & Body Works. No, the White Barn, the candle place.
God,
it's so funny.
yeah, like if I smell something, that is the only time I will gag. Is that if it's a like vile scent to me,
Yeah.
I will gag. However, I also understand that to him, buffalo sauce smells great. To me, it is disgusting and vile, and it puts me in a place of like immediate anger that I can't sit with, in a way that like no, like, I don't know, non-white food has ever put me in that place. I've never gone into like an Indian restaurant or a like Mexican restaurant or a Filipino restaurant, or like anytime you cook fish and you're like, I'm sorry guys, it's going to smell like fish. I'm like, this smells fine to me. But like buffalo sauce, that shit is disgusting. And as someone who does enjoy the taste of ketchup, because I am kind of white still, mostly white, ketchup's delicious. However, the smell, the moment I am done eating it, makes me want to throw up, and it gives me a headache instantly. And that's what buffalo sauce does. I make a point, because when we first discussed the fact that him making comments on Callie's food was a form of racism, I now make a point that anytime that he brings up like, or he makes food that I think smells disgusting, I'm like, that smells vile.
Yeah. Like it doesn't feel good to hear that, right?
And
like,
then he sits and he goes, and I'm like, you see how that doesn't feel good? And it's because for us, I've realized that's the easiest way to like teach him, because he wasn't asked that question as a child. if this happened to me, how would I feel? So I have to essentially do that in his adulthood, is be like, that doesn't make you feel good, right? So maybe we don't comment on other people's foods. Now, I still, as somebody who's on like, the autism spectrum, I still have to like protect myself, which means that like if he like eats food and we're in the living room, I'll have to take that plate away and put it in the like kitchen to protect myself. But then I can also be like, sorry, that just I just can't with that smell.
Yes, and we build systems around that.
Yes.
And I think that's the thing is like, that's being in a relationship where you care. You care about how your words affect people, but you in turn, we also care about how it affects you.
Yes.
Where it's like, okay, now it's not a cultural thing. This is actually just an autism thing.
Yeah,
this is a sensory thing.
This is a sensory thing. But we also discuss it. So like you still will apologize for the way food smells. And then I come in and say, hey, like this doesn't smell bad. Because also like I'm sure anyone who's listened to more than just this episode knows that bitch can cook. So
Thank you.
98% of the time it smells delicious. But like I also understand that that's a wound. And so being cautious of the wounds that like the people that you love and you're in relationship with is another way in which you can show up. And I don't need to come in and be like, that's not racist. Because I could absolutely come from a place of white privilege, which once again, as a sensory person, I really struggle with that like place because I'm like, vinegar smells terrible, but I'm English. So I think that malt vinegar, the only correct vinegar, smells amazing. But I also understand that like to someone who's not used to that culture, that would smell terrible. And like, that's that thing of like, I don't get to determine what your wounds are.
Yes, absolutely.
Same as you don't get to determine what my wounds are, but we have empathy for each one.
Yeah. How do we coexist in peace with full understanding of each other?
You can think up and down the street that the way that you close a door when you leave for work is a banal and neutral action. But if it is something that deeply upsets, bothers, and leaves your partner feeling unconsidered on a daily or weekly basis, that is a reality in your life. It is not a reality that your intentions, right, align with their experience. It is a reality that they are having that experience, and that it is your job, if you care about your partner, to understand that and figure out how to mitigate it, right? You don't want your partner to feel that way. That is a suboptimal outcome. So what tweaks, what shifts need to occur in the relationship to get the optimal outcome, which is a sense of safety, belonging, and care? I have a feeling this video is going to get a lot of mixed feelings, and I get why. In the process of writing my book, I've noticed this characteristic shared by both men, women, and friends beyond the binary, even folks in different gendered relationships. And it all ties into this feeling of essentially emotional enslavement. That the very tenets of a relationship that make it sustainable, that make it strong, that make it stable, that we are intended to invest in order to receive the benefits of it, are somehow being coerced from us against our will. That even after 20 years of marriage, we still are at the risk of being taken advantage of by giving our time, care, investment, and energy to our partner freely. That there is some shoe that is going to drop, that there is some upper hand that is going to usurp all of our power or sense of control in the relationship. Again, this is a standoff. When we enter relationships, a lot of the time, I think it's largely because we're in love. We don't necessarily think about what it is that we're doing together. We especially don't often think about why we're doing it together. We don't think about what that person brings into our life that we couldn't pay someone to do. And we certainly don't think about how our lives are mutually better together. And so when issues of conflict arise and the desire to control a narrative to protect our own felt or perceived sense of goodness, our own ego, our own fear of being wrong come up, we throw the relationship and our partner under the bus every time to save our own butts.
To save our own butts. Okay. That's huge for me. It's in order to protect my sense of self, my sense of being a good person, my sense of goodness, my sense of, or like even just the ego, like I need to be right in this scenario. You throw your partner under the bus in order to protect that. And obviously that is exactly what pushes people apart. It's when I've always grasped the concept of like conflict is an opportunity to grow closer, but now it's like really become like concrete in my mind after like listening to this video twice now, that you cannot have any kind of closeness if you're at that standoff, if you're at that brigade, if your feelings and sense of self of being good or whatnot come before the person that you've hurt. Now, that's not something that a good person would do, though. Good people hurt good people all the time.
Yeah.
All the time. The difference is making that room and making that space and that repair to be able to thrive in that relationship. Mm-hmm. That's the big difference, not throwing someone under the bus.
Well, and as someone who came from a family where being right was the most important thing, I have to say it was hard to let go of, like in our relationship, was that someone younger than me, once again, that power dynamic goes both ways, but someone younger than me and just with less experience of the world.
Way less experience. I didn't know that you had to install your own handles on cabinet doors.
I was like, way less? Who you calling old?
No.
But that sense of letting go of the idea of being right is probably one of the most liberating things. And the idea of being like good is also one of the most liberating things, because at the end of the day, I'm not good to anyone who's like, anti-abortion. Mm-hmm. I'm not good.
Yeah. We're not cool.
Yeah, I'm not good if you're like someone who's really big into religion and I'm not. Mm-hmm. So the perception of being good changes person to person, but the perception of being like a safe space for the people that I love is probably something that I sit on more. Like caring about the relationships that I have is a larger anchor point. And that being said, like, it's not that I'm dependent on these relationships. So let me be really clear about that like, if she decided tomorrow, like, hey, I don't want to do business with you, I don't want to do life with you, like, I'm going to leave, I would help her pack her bags. Mm-hmm. I would be devastated, obviously. Mm-hmm. I would be upset, but I also would not put that on you, because I would want you to do whatever you believe is best for your life.
Well, yeah, that's like actually loving someone is like trusting them as well to make that decision, and also like having space for yourself, but not pushing that onto them.
Yeah, and I think that that's like my biggest thing is that like it's holding the relationship above your own ego. Mm-hmm. And it's a really hard place to sit in, because like if you come from a place where being right is what keeps you safe, mm-hmm. which is like the childhood that I came in, was like if you were right, you were safe. If you were winning, you were safe. Mm-hmm. But if you were like losing, and the idea that someone else might be right over you, or that like somebody might be hurt by something you said and you didn't intend to hurt them, that like cracks the foundation of who you are as a person.
Yep.
But leaning into that to realize that like that is a really fragile way to value your own like humanity and your own, and I say this in quotations, goodness. Mm-hmm. Like my like value in myself is the fact that like, and this I guess goes back to a really long time ago where I didn't think I was a good friend. Like I know I'm a good friend. But also in knowing that I'm a good friend, it means that, yes, I will be there for you. But also I'm a good friend to myself now, which means I will be there for myself and I will make sure that I am well taken care of. Yep. And so it is about like removing that sense that like, what if you think I'm bad? Mm-hmm. Because I no longer think I'm bad.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. And I don't have to prove that I'm bad either. And I
don't have to prove that I'm a good person.
Or that I'm good. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I don't have to prove that. And that's something that like Caboose and I have been going back and forth on this a lot. And I use him a lot as this example because like we've been going through this. But the idea that like if he says something that upsets me, before it would have been like, oh my God, you think I'm a terrible person. And now he's like, oh, I didn't mean to upset you. And the like pressure of always getting it right is then removed. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's kind of the like flip side of like, once you get past those hurdles of like having to always be perfect and do it right because you were taught that love is conditional. And to be clear, it is conditional. If you abuse me, I'm not staying in this.
Yeah.
If you can't meet me where I'm at, I'm not staying in this. Mm-hmm. But in the sense that like you always have to do things perfectly, that condition doesn't exist in healthy relationships because like we said earlier yesterday, we weren't both perfect. Like I knew that you were hurting, but we had to get stuff done. Mm-hmm. You know that I'm hurting, that we had to get stuff done, and we have to act happy for the camera, but we don't feel happy. We're both essentially shells of who the fuck we are as people.
Yeah.
And just going through the motions. Thank God we can still tattoo.
So one time that the voices are quiet in my brain.
Yeah. I'm like dying to only tattoo right now. Yeah. I'm like tattooing and painting. I'm like, that's the only time my brain will stop. But that it's removing, like, even though that sense of ego feels like safety, as someone who has recovered from that, it's fucking not.
Yeah. It's a facade.
Yes.
It's not real. And it drives people away.
Yes.
Realizing that this is a kamikaze for the whole operation. Something Dr. Stan Tatkin talks about all the time is the fact that if you want a sustainable relationship, you can't have fights in your own foxhole. There has to be agreement set on how we govern ourselves and each other. And we have to understand that a loss for one is a loss for the entire relationship. That there is, in fact, no winning. There is no victory if everybody's not winning. And it doesn't mean that everything has to be all or nothing. It doesn't mean that there can't be compromises, that we can't use seduction and negotiation to get our needs met and to do that in a way that feels balanced, equitable, and just for everybody. But it does mean that some of these power dynamics need to be examined if we're going to get the full benefit of relationship that I think we're all looking for. At the end of the day, we don't have to pick everybody to invest this deeply in, right? And so when our partner comes to us and they're essentially asking, do you care about this? The answer should be, in action, in deed, in word, in expression, a resounding yes as frequently as possible. We chose to trust this person. We chose to take them on as they chose to take us on, which means when they're injured, we are too, and we need to tend to it accordingly. With humility, with grace, and with curiosity. And you can't get that done if it's more important to be right.
Amazing.
Yeah, like, just perfection, honestly.
Absolutely amazing. Yeah, that video is just iconic. It's great. I'm really glad that we got to share on the podcast. Again, we'll leave a link down to where we found the video. So that way you guys can take another listen at it without our input.
Yes. So you can just listen to it uninterrupted.
Yeah, exactly.
And replay it as many times as you want because like everything on there is just...
It's beautiful. It's the key to being human and having connections. And like, that's the thing is like, no, you don't have to invest in everyone like this, but like the people who are close to you, the people who are in your circle, wouldn't you want to?
Also, just to kind of like add on that, you shouldn't invest in everyone like this.
Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because your time and energy are a finite resource. So choose the people that you want to invest in and go from there. Yep.
Well, do you have anything else to say? I mean, it ended perfectly.
Yeah.
It's just so good. I just want to double, triple check that I got this correctly. I don't have like an actual...
That's okay. We will put the link in the show notes.
Okay. I think actually I did say the wrong name. It's I think it's Jamila Bradley is what it is. So Jamila Bradley, thank you so much for doing that. So sorry. I don't know. I read the wrong name off of the link. But holy cow. Thank you guys for listening. If you made it this far, I hope you learned something new. I hope you learned something that'll help you in your future relationships. And if not, just maybe your relationship with yourself. Thank you. Yeah. You have anything else you'd like to say?
No, that's perfect. Fantastic. So on that note, what was your win for the week? It's been a really bad week. So if you can find a win, then...
My win for this week is keeping the ball rolling while also being gentle with myself. I still really struggle with letting myself like be upset. I've realized today actually was the first day I was able to like actually cry alone.
You're
and
welcome.
Thank you for that. Thank you for inspiring some tears. No, but I realized that because I have this weird dynamic with feelings of being like upset about like anything that's happening in my life, I will turn it back onto me and my self-talk will get really negative. Wow. Yeah, because I inadvertently have been trained to take any negative feelings about the external things that are happening around in my life to use it against myself, which makes a lot of sense when you think about like the dynamic of like where I came from growing up. So I'm upon realizing that cycle, my win for the week is realizing that and working against that pattern.
That's a really good win.
Thank
Can we
you.
just sit in that for a second? Like that's
It was a crazy revelation.
yeah, that's huge.
It was huge. Yeah, it happened like literally. I thought to text it to you guys, but then I was like, oh, we'll talk about it on the podcast. Like it'll be fine.
Well, damn, dude.
That's my win.
Yeah.
What's your win?
My win is, I guess to build off that slightly, is to let myself feel grief the way it is.
Yeah.
Which for me is a lot of like, once again, like a shark staying in motion.
Yep.
Like
Lots of highs and lows.
I will go 180 and then I will just be like, just stuck.
Floored.
I'll just be on the floor. And it's just like kind of accepting where I'm at. And just like letting myself do what I need to do. That like, if it looks like just doing to like escape the like just overall oppressive grief of everything. And like anyone who's over the age of fucking 30, I don't know. I feel like I'm a fucking old right now. Like I feel like if I was to be like anyone who's over the age of 40 and I'm not over the age of 40. But like, yeah, I think that it's just like accepting where you're at and what grief looks like for you.
Yeah. Like
Because,
fully just
like,
letting it happen.
Yeah, because like when my dad died when I was 18, it was more so confusing than anything else because all my grandparents were alive. And at that stage in my life, I lived in this like idea of like, that doesn't make sense. Like people die when they get old. And so this kind of situation where it's like where we lost Waffles and she was the youngest of our dogs. Didn't necessarily trigger this like confusion as much as like very much like the Barbie movie says, like the older you get, the more like thoughts of death, the irrepressible thoughts of death come up.
Yeah. Because the more you deal with it, right?
Yeah. Well, it happened before Waffles got diagnosed with cancer where I would just start thinking about like the fact that like at some point I will cease to exist. And those like thoughts come up more and more. And so whatever that looks like for me, if that looks like writing or journaling or like painting the house or like whatever it is, just kind of like giving myself grace through those things to be like, if that looks like you need a workout, cool. If that looks like you need to fucking repaint your bathroom, that's what that looks like. Yeah. But really just kind of giving grace for all the ways in which to express grief.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
This is a very good win.
Yeah, thanks.
You're welcome. Gosh.
Your win.
We're pretty tired, as you guys can tell. It's been a rough X amount of time.
Long period of time. Yeah. We were trying to figure out when it wasn't rough earlier.
And life is simultaneously so hard and so good.
And that's what we were talking about, was that like simultaneously it's been a hard several years and also an amazing several years.
Beautiful. Like the most gorgeous.
Yep.
So, well, thank you guys for following along on our journey. We'll see you whenever we see you.
Yep. Next week.
Next week.
This is a weekly podcast. We'll see you guys next week.
See you guys next week.
Bye.
Bye.